Hello, gentlemen. So, I firmly believe that the distance between interpretations of communication between men and women is just too vast for us to bridge. You may have heard it said before that men and women are not natural allies. I think that any man who uses that big soft brain of his will corroborate that statement. I hope you will find this video interesting, and maybe I can put into words some thoughts that you've had when you wondered why the real trustful friends in your life are all males. I'd like to talk a little bit about male to female bickering and how men and women are not the natural friends of one another because of our strict biological differences. Now, growing up in a strict biblical household, I was taught that there was no friendship between man and woman. That was day one for me. I think the Christians understood this concept far better than our modern society does. Here are a few Bible quotations on the relationship between men and women, which may be helpful to better understand where the roots of Western civilization came from and male and female relationships. So this is what they believed, essentially. So Ephesians 5, verses 22 to 33. Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. Husbands, love your wives, as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word. So that one there is a little bit ambiguous, but the main part I wanted to get at was the beginning. Wives, submit to your husbands as you would to the Lord. But anyway, 1 Timothy 2, verses 11 to 15. Let a woman learn quietly with all submissiveness. I do not permit a woman to teach or to exercise authority over a man. Rather, she is to remain quiet. For Adam was formed first, then Eve. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman was deceived and became a transgressor. Yet she will be saved through childbearing, if they continue in faith and love and holiness with self-control. Now, this, of course, is not an endorsement of Christianity, and it certainly is not an endorsement of marriage. However, I do believe that it makes sense that our civilization was able to flourish best when women were collectively more subservient to their husbands. The writers of these verses were clearly not deceived by the wishful thinking of equality between the sexes that seems to permeate through our culture today. The Timothy verse, the second one, is very interesting to me, where the author writes that women are deceitful and transgressive, but that they can be saved and essentially redeemed through childbirth. Now compare that to what we get today for the stock answer from the female equality camp, that women are not just baby rearers, but instead can be and do anything and do it just as well as men. Of course, there are exceptions to the rule, but as we know, what women do excel at best is child rearing. I know many women, and I'm sure you do too, who, if they didn't have children to raise, they really would have no purpose. But that's neither here nor there. Whatever your beliefs are on how humanity came to inhabit the position we are in now is neither here nor there either. However, it is clear that we are more than a stone's throw away from this idea that women should be subservient to a husband. Nowadays, we just lie. We lie to our children. We tell them that men and women are 100% equal. 100%, no differences at all. So when, as men, we enter relationships after having grown up with this drilled into our minds, we enter these relationships usually, or at least a lot of us do, based on genuine feelings of equality and respect for our female counterparts. Now, I would like you to remember the first serious relationship where you gave the woman of your life an excess amount of respect. There is to be no embarrassment in the fact we all started off as manginas, and that's okay. And we made exceptions for our women that we never should have allowed. Many of us corrected for these mistakes and have gone our own way. But if you remember as well as I remember what happened when I treated my girlfriend the way that I would want to be treated, which is with full respect, always listening when they speak, always giving them all of me. This happened to me and to many men. The woman got bored and she walked away. And, this was many years ago, my first major relationship, but I'm so glad it did happen. as men, we need these moments of awakening to instill in us this idea that there's a different path. But that's neither here nor there as well, and that's a video for another day. But I do want to tell you guys that I was at the beach this weekend. I'll tell you a little story. It was a beautiful day. Waves were about 6 feet high, crashing all around. It was beautiful. I look out, and I see a rather pleasant sight as well. There was a man and a woman that were holding hands, and their kids were on either side of them. And they were standing tall in the water as the waves crashed around their feet. They were laughing, smiling, and generally looked to be having a nice time. Me, having a soft spot for a healthy-looking family, could not help but feel a sense of warmth at seeing a relationship that looked relatively stable. I was taken by the imagery and the metaphor of it all, I must admit. However, as with all of my romantic illusions, the scene fell apart when the family ended up walking past me and I was able to overhear their conversation. So the woman leading the way was saying something along the lines of this: "I didn't think it was funny. Really? I get knocked down and I look up and I just see you standing there doing what? Laughing. Laughing. I don't think that's funny at all." Now, I see this poor man was following on the woman's heels, literally mouth agape, trying to get out his word of apology, can't get out any words because it's just snap, snap, snap. Well, we shouldn't have laughed, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure you've seen it a million times. I don't have to explain to you in detail what this looked like. I do not know if there are otherworldly forces that act on this grand stage of ours, but sometimes it does feel as though the universe is emitting its own mysterious signals to me, like a child passing a note in class. It's nice to get these reminders. When the illusion kind of takes hold, it's kind of nice when it just breaks itself for you and everything falls into place the way that you expect it to. But anyway, I'm sure that this woman did not find what happened to her to be very funny at all. She was clearly embarrassed. Her man saw her get hit by a wave, knocked down, and guess what? He laughed. He emitted an involuntary response to an external stimuli that acted as a positive feedback loop. He laughed. A laugh is most definitely one of the more positive reactions that we can have to any worldly encounter in this bleak life of ours. His woman did not share in his sense of humor, but look, and she took the man's involuntary laughter as a kind of slight. And of course, this woman was not going to miss out on a perfectly good opportunity to display some faux outrage over what is clearly a joke of a transgression. And you know what, man? I bet that this man might have to hear about this experience for the rest of his life. You know how it could be. The time he laughed at his wife instead of helping her up. Oh, you never let him forget about that one. She'll probably end up telling the story to the family, his in-laws. And as much as I feel for this man, it is really difficult to feel empathy for the nether apes. I do feel empathy, I really do. But, you know, I do feel empathy, that's all. But what I really feel for is the real victims in the situation, who are the children, who have to watch their father being utterly emasculated. How is this man's son supposed to process the info that he sees? So, this is what it means to be a man. It is wrong to laugh at a woman. Mom and Dad seem to be in agreement over that. I need to make sure that I do not laugh at a woman. And just like that, as the boy subconsciously figures out which behaviors are acceptable, and before he even had a chance, the circle of emasculation continues. Men and women are not friends. A woman can be the acquaintance of a man, but as we know, no woman can ever really understand the male experience. At best, she can look at us with awe or true admiration, but she can never fully comprehend what it means to be a male on planet Earth. And yes, it is true that neither can we ever understand the female experience, at least not completely. But I sincerely believe that this is far less harmful to the female psyche than the latter, or rather the male counterpart, because our endgames are entirely different. Generally speaking, a man's deepest desire from his mate is to be totally and utterly understood, accepted, and taken as they are, But a woman, she desires to be provided for and protected, taken care of, looked after, held. It is really a much more simple world. And since we have staggeringly different physiological makeup, of course the man and women will never really understand one another. You know, when I'm trying to teach my normie or nether ape friends on why men and women must be viewed as different brands of ape, I tell them to simply add up the hormones. Just do the math on the hormones. We know that testosterone acts upon the mind in a certain way, and we know that estrogen or progesterone acts upon the mind in a very different way. Just do the math. With each gender generally having a very skewed testosterone to estrogen balance, it does not take a genius to conclude that our brains operate differently, and thus our informed experiences are going to be made based on different backgrounds. We interpret the same stimuli differently because our brain physiology is different. The male to female bicker is the ambient noise of my life. It feels like just about every day, everywhere I go, I have to contend with hearing a linked pair of men and women polluting the common air with the noise of their malice. You won't hear the real fights in public. It is always the surface conflicts that manifest, usually as a result of male to female miscommunication. Real friends, real friends communicate with one another. They make themselves understood. You take your friend at face value because that is how you'd like to be treated in return, isn't it? But women, well, they have mastered the art of digging for an underlying meaning where no such subtext exists. They are notorious for this, aren't they? Now tell me, have you ever been with your woman and you were just trying to enjoy a moment of silent reverie? Maybe you were driving, cooking, reading, staring at the wall, but you were enjoying silence. But you had a woman with you, and you were interrupted by the noise of her neuroticisms. You know, it doesn't matter if she knows that you like to be silent. Occasionally assume silence for silence sake. It doesn't matter. She can hardly remember that. When the hormones are buzzing, the things of the past are secondary to the circumstances of the present. So to her, there must be something wrong. Something that you're holding back. So she thinks you're mad, upset, disappointed, furious, holding back. Why would she feel this way? Haven't you always been straight up with her in the past? Well, that little fact hardly matters to the creature who is being acted upon by an unholy array of nervous system altering hormones. A neurotic woman can hardly connect the pieces at all. She is assuming the worst. So you tell her, no, you're not mad. You just feel like sitting in silence. Just want to enjoy the silence, right? A fair request? Tell me this. If you asked your bro if you could sit in silence, how would he react? Would he respect your wishes, occupy himself, and also take to silence? Or would he glare at you with that passive-aggressive expression that just screams, nah, I don't trust your truth? Because your woman is giving you those looks. Miscommunication. And the bickering begins. If you ever told your woman the truth about your feelings, and she gave you a snarling look of mistrust, then you can only conclude that that woman is not your friend. She does not understand you. She is not going to understand you. Don't live in a lie. Now, I believe I've been pretty generous in this hypothetical situation. I personally have not dated a woman who wouldn't take no for an answer in one of these situations, but that's just me. I imagine for you men who have, where whatever answer you give to your woman for a question is not enough, I bet that's a different kind of hell altogether. What are you saying? You don't mean that. How do you really feel? Why aren't you talking to me? Did I do something wrong? Is it something I said? Did I make you mad? Are you mad at me? You sure? You sure? You absolutely sure? How do you respond to this woman? Well, you really know that there's nothing more to say, don't you? Because the idea that you are holding something back has taken hold of the vessel. It doesn't matter if she knows that you like to assume silence. It doesn't matter if it was just yesterday that the same situation happened. I know her only as a creature of instinct. Leo Tolstoy. It doesn't matter what you have to say because the idea has taken hold of the vessel. And unless you bounce out of whatever reverie you're in into some kind of chipper mood, kiss at her feet, hold her hand, hold her, give her a hug, and smile. You gotta smile, of course, because if you're just looking forward with a nice blank expression, that's not enough. You're lying to her. She cannot be convinced that you're just alright unless you bounce back into what she imagines you to be. Because these women, especially when they're attracted to us, they make up images of us in their heads on what we are. And if we don't live up to it and the illusion starts to fail, well, that's a very dangerous part for a relationship. And I can only imagine how much worse this gets with age. Oh my goodness. I don't think I need to tell you guys about it. I mean, you've all been around old couples who can't even open their mouths without finding something to go at each other over. Something that the other person did wrong, didn't do correctly. Because they've become a unit. They have morphed into one. And when one makes a mistake or acts in such a manner that the other one feels is less than par, well, that's it. The whole entire unit has fucked up. And as this inevitable hate grows between a man and woman, as it grows and we look at it and we hear it, our society, what do? They act like it's something cute, something to be fawned over. They fight like an old married couple. Oh, real glowing endorsement in it. Anyway, man, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you're a man in a relationship and this video made you feel some type of way, you related to this at all, shoot me a message. Let's get you out of that ship while it's still on water. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a comment and tell me about the last male to female bicker you've heard. I want to hear the mundane, the miserable, because I firmly believe that if men are exposed to the idea that they do not need to live with this kind of malice that comes from the inevitable male to female miscommunication, then they could consider choosing another path. Listen to me, and listen good. You, listener, are a man. It is up to you to craft your own destiny. If you do not want the male to female bicker to be the ambient noise of your life, there's another road. I leave you with a question. When you are entering into your glory years, and you're old, your hair starts going gray, getting ready for retirement, work sucks, your cock probably doesn't work like it used to, and the stresses of life are bearing upon your shoulders, will you look forward to walking into your home and having to make some idle and diplomatic chatter with your obscenely foolish woman? Chatter with the high hopes that she won't misinterpret your words as some kind of transgression about the unit that you two have built together? Or would you like to walk into a quiet home, take a deep breath, and seize upon whatever treats that your solitude can offer? There's a different way. You can go your own way. Thank you very much for listening. More to come very soon.